welcome to my studio this Mech week. Circumstances have changed on me slightly, which means I'm not going to have as much time to commit to Mech week and giving you good content as I'd hoped, but this is the very first time I've tried to do Mech week. Next year we'll come back to it, it'll be more planned, more organised, but that doesn't mean there's no content. I am doing my best to create something of interest, to make it worthwhile. So one of the first things I wanted to do was show you my own collection. I don't have an enormous Mech collection and there are some significant gaps, but I'm going to take you through what I've got and talk about why I don't own some of the things that I don't own. So let's take you through some of what I do have. We've got these smart little light mechs, are from Brigade Models here at the front. Really like these ones. They're definitely more inspired, more focused on sort of modern designs that people are making in popular culture to try and create real mechs. You can see they've kind of got really squat, bent knees to absorb lots of the impact of walking. They're not straight-legged at all. They've got a more or less sort of like a car or aircraft type cockpit, and they've got a pair of arms. They don't have digits or fingers, they've just got weapons on arm levels. And it's important as well that their weapons are quite high up, and one of the challenges with mechs often is that the weapons fall down. We can see this in some of the others later, the weapons drop down, which makes no sense because in warfare you want your weapons up high. Got a couple more little teeny weeny light mechs over here. So those are Brigade Models. These ones, now it's not a case that I don't know where they're from, it's a case of I'm not sure who still owns it. I think it's now War Games Emporium, I think. EMP is the name of the sci-fi range. Guys based in Sheffield. I think these are now part of their range. Then this one here actually is a 15mm infantry support bot, technically speaking. I really like it at a range of different scales. It's a crab bot from Ground Zero Games. That's one which appears in a lot of my games. I like it at 28mm, I like it at 15, at 6mm, it's really good. So working our way back now into the slightly larger mechs, there are some important ones to pull out. We're going to pull out this one and this one and this one and this one. Here we go. So that's these four mechs are all from the same manufacturer. These are all EM4 Miniatures plastic mechs. So these are all plastic. They come on a sprue. On a sprue you get one of these, you get two of these, and there are... I've left them somewhere else today. They should be in this cabinet, but they're missing. I'm not sure where they are. Then there are two slightly smaller mechs, so you get 5 mechs on in a sprue. A sprue, if I remember, is about £3 now, and if you buy a box you get 2 sprues, so you get 10 mechs, 2 heavy, 4 medium, 4 light, for like a £5. It's not much more than that. I mean, you can't get a better deal on Mech Minis. And even though, you know, they do have these clear sort of cockpit areas that sort of point them towards being 6mm, you can easily not paint those with a glass effect. It becomes less obvious that it's a cockpit. You could run it as a 15mm thing. You can even run them as support robots at 28mm without much trouble at all. I've done it often. Okay, so put those guys to one side. Now these three actually, I've got 3 of these. 3 different designs, but they're all from the same manufacturer. Those are from Paulson Games. Now, John Paulson at Paulson Games is not manufacturing these at the moment, but I know he is taking a look at getting them back in, and he's thinking about maybe shrinking them slightly. I was discussing it with John just the other day. He's thinking about maybe dropping their size 10-15%. Because they just feel a little bit bulky. They are a lovely modern sort of pseudo-realist design. Again, the weapons are mostly raised up, which makes broadly a certain amount of sense. They've got almost exclusively the sort of chicken walker digitigrade look to them. that's quite cool. This one over here, who's got a weird pose, I was trying to make it look like he was sort of, you know, dodging or weaving or something. I think personally it turns out looks like he was about to fall over. But it's a lovely design of miniature. I ought to remember what they're all called. This one I think is a lynx or a wolverine or something. And as I say, it doesn't matter. John's not selling them at the moment, but do watch his website. Look for Paulson, I think it's called Paulson Games, something like that on Facebook. And he's been chatting about bringing those back in. Right. Oh, moving over this way, I've got one, two. Oh, I should, before I move that way, actually, I'm going to pull out one of the big mechs, because this one here, see this one? This big mech here is also Paulson Games, and it is the 15mm version of this that's the 6mm mech. But I like this mech at all kinds of scales. I use it as a super mech at 6mm, as a big mech at 15mm, and I just use it as a sort of a defense robot kind of miniature at 28mm as well. I've got two of these. The other one is currently occupied with another project. I shall put that one at the back. Speaking of mechs that I forgot though, I should look at those in a second, this one forward, because this is also EMP, and I am certain that this is EMP Games. I'm not certain that these are, because the ownership of these designs moved around quite a lot. It used to be with Bacchus. Bacchus passed them on to somebody else. It might have been Alternative Armies. It might have been EMP. I can't remember who owns these designs now. This one is definitely EMP. It is obviously a giant super mech. You look at their version, it's a bit more straight-legged. I didn't like it being really super straight-legged. I didn't think it made sense. So you can see he's a bit more squat. I'll put him right at the back again. So these two guys here and this guy here are all from a company called Strato Minis in Poland. Strato and I are good friends. We work together on a few projects, including a game called Hard War, which is in development. Well, the game is developed because the game itself is basically it's Horizon Wars reskinned, I guess you would call it. It's got some additional stuff. But their range of mechs is interesting because if you know your mechs, you will recognise some of these bear a resemblance to mechs in the Battletech range. And that's kind of where Strato started, was producing mechs that were not Battletech, but certainly Battletech approximate. So we've got this giant thing here which they call the Kaiju. This guy, I can't remember what the name of this design is, but he's definitely sort of more Battletech-y. It's a humanoid design with regular anthropomorphic legs and arms. He's got a head on the top and his weapons are on his arms. Doesn't make any logical sense in modern military sense, but it looks cool. This one is nicely brightly painted because I use it as a sports mech, so he sort of acts as a giant mech sports robot. This is one of their new releases. They actually sent it to me a few months before it was released, and I didn't realise they'd sent me a preview with an order that I put in with them. This is called the Groja. It is an original design, one of Strato's unique designs. Again, I've posed it quite dynamically for use in sports, but I really like this design of mech. And that is Strato Minis. Now this one I'm going to bring forward because this one is a slightly controversial piece. Like Strato, this is from a range of miniatures that they draw heavily upon the MechWarrior Online designs versions of the Battletech range, and they're from a company called Warhansa. And I've got a couple of Warhansa minis, but this is the only one in the cabinet at the moment. I think maybe I sold the other one. I'm not sure. Anyway, regardless, if you're a MechWarrior Online guy, you'll probably recognise the designs. Warhansa's Russian company, and basically they pretty much wholesale stole the designs from MechWarrior Online. The ones that Strato Minis do, as I say, they are Battletech approximate. You know, they clearly look like certain designs within the Battletech range, but they are equally clearly new versions of those that have been designed as original pieces with aesthetic echoes of the original. These ones are pretty much exactly what you get in the old MechWarrior Online games. Can't remember which design this is, but it's a good looking mech. One of the things I do like about this mech is the design of the arms on both sides make it look as if the arm itself can fold upwards and become a sort of a more turret arrangement on the top of the mech, and that does make a lot of sense as a design point. I'll pop him away. Another range that is represented in the cabinet here, we've got these two minis. We'll look at this one first. They're both from the Cav range, which is a range of miniatures manufactured by Reaper Miniatures, marketed by Talon Games, who I think have the license for the Cav game. This is one of the old metal ones. He's a heavy lump, this guy. I've left the top half sort of wobbly, mainly for transport reasons. These are a larger scale of mech compared to most of these mechs are 6mm. These guys are supposed to be 10mm. I mean, to be honest, I think you'd struggle to really say that they're a distinctly larger scale than any of the others. They're just slightly larger mechs. So that one's one of the old metal designs. This is one of the new plastic designs, the Bones plastic that they've been producing. It's not easy to see from that angle, but he's got quad missile launchers on the top of the mech. So that's two there. I'm going to bring these guys forward. These are from a Russian manufacturer. These are both plastic miniatures. They both come on a sprue. They're from a Russian manufacturer, and I really ought to remember their name. It's something like Zod, something along those lines, but you'll see them crop up on eBay quite a lot. The designs themselves I would describe as sci-fi naive. They don't really make a lot of logical sense, certainly, but even the sort of the poses and the postures are clearly designed for ease of manufacture within the process rather than for necessarily getting the best possible look. As you can see on this one, he's got these weird disc-shaped feet, he's got this funny splayed knee pose. The designs themselves are, you know, once they're done, they paint up really nicely, as you can see, and they're pretty cheap. They're nearly as cheap as the EM4 Minis, and obviously, as you can see, they're much bigger pieces of plastic. I would say for the gamer on a budget, they're a really good choice, but you know, they're not super great designs. But talking of not super great designs, let's bring this guy forward. You may recognise this one. I realise that he's kind of green against a background of brown, so I'm sorry if you can't see him very clearly. But this is a Valkyrie from the Robotech Tactics utter failure of a game, Kickstarter, launch, whatever. I was lucky enough to pick some of these guys up second-hand and pre-assembled, so I take no responsibility for their assembly. Apparently they're an utter nightmare to assemble. I can tell you they were an utter nightmare to strip the old paint job off and redo them. As a result, I've only finished this one. I've got like 4 or 5 others sitting in a box somewhere waiting for me to get to them. I mean, they're gorgeous. The original concept, the design, I was a kid when this was Jetfire for the Transformers range. You know, I adore it. I love the jets. I love the robot mode. Not that big on the mode that's halfway between the jet and the robot. I'm not really quite sure what the point of that is. It's a lovely looking miniature, but unless, like me, you can pick them up second-hand at a knockdown price, I wouldn't bother. There are some much better, newer versions of these guys coming out, which, interestingly enough, Strato Minis sell. I can't remember the name of the manufacturers or the retailers other than Strato, but they're worth looking at. They are very pricey, though, that much I will say. And if you want all 3 modes of the one transforming mech, then you know it's going to cost you a pretty penny. I mean, it's like £45–50 to get all 3 modes of one miniature. Okay, we've got 2 more to look at. This one is actually, again, it's another 15mm mech, but I happen to think it works well as just a super mech at this range. It's from a game called the Ion Age, which has got a really good large range of I want to say near future. That's not quite fair, but let's just say it's sort of hard distance sci-fi. This is one of the mech designs in the range. I think he's pretty cool. Again, he's got kind of a straddly stance, and obviously he's got the anthropomorphic shape, and the weapon on the arm. But at least he does have a weapon on his shoulder so that he can still shoot over cover. And it's certainly a very assertive, dynamic kind of look, even if he is a little bit straddly. And the last one is this one. And if anybody can tell me where this one came from, I would appreciate being reminded. I have a vague recollection that this is also EMP Games. Obviously it bears a sort of resemblance to sort of Orky designs in the sort of the Games Workshop range, but obviously it's quite distinct, it's quite unique. Yes, it's anthropomorphic, but it kind of looks a bit ramshackle and steampunky, and I like that, and the anthropomorphic design in that context makes a lot more sense. Again, he's got a weapon on his arm. The close combat weapon on the arm makes more sense, but with the guns and the rockets on the shoulders, you know, he still has that kind of over cover capability. So that's my mech shelf, having talked about the various different ranges that I've got on here. Now I've got a couple more mechs I'd like to show you before I talk about the absences from my collection. So let's pull one of them down now. So this one here began life as a Therian golem from the AT-43 range that basically saw off Rackham Miniatures in France. It comes pre-painted black. As you can see, I have repainted it. I also removed some stuff, so there is a funny sort of mask-like face on the front, which I've taken off, and there would be a weapon on this side as well, which I removed. I just like this as a solid. This is really, I tend to run this in 28mm games. I like it. It's got a really good solid sort of insecty threatening feel to it, but I feel like this paint scheme that I've given it grounds it a little bit more in sort of real world vehicle camouflage schemes to make it feel that little bit more immediate. And I put some decals on the side just to sort of embed it in that human setting and human world. So that's the AT-43 gun, and they're no longer in production, but you can often find them quite cheaply second hand. And last of all, here he comes. He's a bit dusty. He's a bit dusty because he's waiting for me to finish him. He's been waiting for years for me to finish him. Let's bring this back so you can see the guy. This is a Dreamforge Games Leviathan. Dreamforge is kind of, it is still in business, but it's basically kind of slowly winding itself up. You can still pick these up occasionally, either online or from Dreamforge themselves if they've got any left in stock. This was before Games Workshop did Knights. This was the first 28mm Knight Titan. I mean, I just love the design. I love the look to it. Again, it makes no logical sense whatsoever as a war machine, but doesn't he just look gorgeous? I gave him this sort of urban camo-y finish to him, but he's also got that. You can see he's got a shield on his chest, which gives him that feel of something that's a little bit from the feudal era, and he's got the sword to go with it, and this frankly ludicrous and very, very dusty piece of hardware on his arm. He's about 80% finished. I really need to finish off the last 20% at some point, but you know, I'm not playing any games right now that make use of this size of mech, but he's a lovely piece to have in the cabinet, and I'm glad to own him. Pieces that are conspicuous by their absence. Sorry, I'm going to inflict my face upon you again. Probably the biggest significant absence I've actually mentioned a couple of times is Battletech. Now, I don't own any Battletech minis other than the ones that I've shown you are basically Battletech knockoffs. Reason for that, twofold. First of all, I've never played Battletech. I've read the rules, didn't really fancy them. A lot of the classic designs that hold a lot of nostalgic appeal for people, because I didn't play Battletech in that formative time, it doesn't have that nostalgic call to me. And when you look at them with a modern eye, those old designs do look very dated, very improbable, even given the setting. They look pretty weird. A lot of the newer designs that Catalyst Game Labs are now releasing are much nicer, much more appealing. They are very embedded in that Battletech setting, but they've got more of a 21st century aesthetic to them. I recognise that. I would love to add them to my collection at some point, but frankly, I am never going to be a Battletech player. I just think there are games that are easier to access, and I don't want to say more fun, because that's not. I understand the fun of Battletech and why people love it, but it's just not for me. Other things that are conspicuous by their absence, you'll notice there were no Games Workshop Titans, there weren't any of the old 6mm Titans, any of the new 8mm Titans, and certainly none of their 28mm Titans. Reason for that is primarily life's too short to be stuck playing Games Workshop games. I do love their designs, I would like to own them, but they're quite a long way down my list. I have built and painted several 28mm Titans back in the days when I was a commissioned professional painter, slowly going bankrupt because I'm not that good. Yeah, that's not an experience I would want to inflict on myself again. But I would like to add some of the new Adeptus Titanicus miniatures to my collection at some point. They make no sense, but it's 40k. It doesn't need to make sense because 40k. And I think those are the main ones I wanted to touch upon as being conspicuous by their absence. There are a load of other great manufacturers and people making good mech miniatures out there. Clear Horizons leaps to mind, and Drop Zone Commander, which is now TT Combat. Again, they've got some really nice sleek mech designs in their PHR range. Any others I feel like I should mention? For small scale mechs, no, that's it. I think I've covered off everything that I wanted to. But then the next thing that I'm going to be talking about, but not in this video, are the what I think of more accessible 28mm mechs. So your battle suit style, large infantry mechs, but not battle tank scale guys. And I'm going to be looking at a few of those in my next video, and we're going to be doing some hobby stuff. Alright, well, thanks for watching. I'm sorry that there isn't going to be as much Mech Week content as I'd wanted this week, but hey, this is me doing my best. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.